So I want to begin by talking about how we got here. And at the end of the day, excessive speeding has been one of the biggest threats to pedestrians and cyclists and drivers in our city. And we all agree enough is enough. And we are grateful that Erica Chavez and her family, they have been fighting for all things pedestrian safety for a long time. And this is just one piece. But I want to begin by thanking them for standing with us and sharing Erica's story and not giving up on the notion that our city can be safer for pedestrians. So thank you so much. Thank you. Now, we're also tired of seeing our loved ones in the headlines and on signs like the one to my right. And we know that at the end of the day, like, we have to do more when it comes to this. No one runs for office and says, I want to support mobile speed enforcement, right? This is not something that we're doing because it's popular or it's poll tested, although we know the community is with us on this one. But it's something that basically, one, we have to do in the name of safety. And number two, because of trying to have something that's actually meaningful that doesn't tie up our officers. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I want to mention really where this came from originally. We've been working on something called Vision Zero at the city. And that's a national movement to try and make cities safer for pedestrians. And one of the outcomes of our work in Vision Zero, which is in step with a bunch of different community groups, was that we should look at mobile speed enforcement. And we need to look no further than Rio Rancho or than Santa Fe, even in our own state, where people are doing mobile speed enforcement and where it has had success. And so for us, one of the outcomes from Vision Zero was that it's time our city look at this. We want to acknowledge, I remember 20 years ago with red light cameras. I didn't like them either. I remember that. But I also remember, one, our city is unfortunately in a worse place, and we can't let what happened 20 years ago get in the way of a better way of doing speed enforcement now. The technology is better, and we're implementing it in a much, much different way. And also, I want to say it clearly, this is not red light cameras. This is mobile speed enforcement. There is a huge difference technologically, equitably, in the way it's enforced, and also, frankly, effectiveness. So we're going to talk about those details here today. So I'm going to mention just a little bit more. Then we're going to hear from our counselors and from our acting commander for our traffic unit. And so let me mention that Council wonderfully voted 8-1 to sign this legislation, because I think they recognize the same thing that I just articulated. And I want to thank them for their support on this. And I also want to mention that there are some things that some clear messages we want to say today. Number one is we're putting speeders on notice. You cannot continue to endanger others without consequences. And the amazing thing about these mobile speed enforcement technologies is that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're the mayor. I'm going to get one too. It doesn't matter if you're a truck driver. It doesn't matter if you're in a hurry, right? These are totally motive blind. They are going to cite you for speeding, and it's time that we do it. And we've been testing this. And we have now documented people going over 100 miles an hour on Gibson and Montgomery. There is no reason anyone should ever be going 100 miles an hour. That is exactly what kills people. And that's exactly what we're not going to tolerate anymore. Now, I also want to mention that our goal here is not to rack up citations. It is to prevent speeding from happening in the first place. If you're concerned about getting cited, don't speed. That's our message. If you don't like this, don't speed. We are doing this no matter what. That's what we're signing today. Now, we're also going to commit to listening, and we're going to do this in step with the community. We're going to make sure that we phase this in. We're going to make sure that there's ways to take this to court if you do feel like you were unfairly cited. And we are not going to have the same situation with the vendors that got the city in trouble 20 years ago with red light cameras. This is the only way that has been proven to slow traffic down, not only on the streets that it's on, but in surrounding areas and eventually all over cities all across our country. And so rather than having our officers spend thousands of hours sitting on a street corner with a radar gun, we need them answering violent crime calls. And so I want to be loud and clear. APD supports this 100%. In fact, when I brought it up, I was concerned that there might be issues, and all they said was, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing us to go fight crime in neighborhoods and not stand out on street corners giving speeding tickets. And so that is the good thing about technology. This works for a lot of folks. So with that, what we're going to do is hear from some other folks on this, including a study that we did just to show you how bad the preliminary data is on everyday speeding in our city. So in no particular order, especially because they were all helpful in this, I'm just going to start with Councillor Ike Benton. Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to the Chavez family for helping us honor your lost family member. I've always been a supporter of this kind of technology. Even in the last iteration, it had its problems, as the mayor said, and I think we have checked off the list of a lot of the complaints that existed at that time. But everyone, I think, recognizes an increase in kind of aggressive speeding and aggressive driving on our streets, and it's unsafe, and it's also really harming our quality of life. Just the sense of fear and of just that surprise when somebody blows past you at high speed. So I'm hopeful as well that this is going to take the load off of APD's traffic unit. I want to commend the chief. They have been issuing many more speeding tickets than in the recent past, and also illegal muffler tickets, and we need to focus on that as well. That's a different matter, also a quality of life matter, however. So yeah, I'm hopeful that it will take the load off our traffic units so that they can continue to do their work on apprehending these violators and minimizing and lessening that aggressive atmosphere out on our streets. So thank you.
Okay, and let's actually do a couple things. We'd love to hear next from Councillor Senna, and also Maury, if you want, why don't you come over here? I just want to make sure that people know the names that's okay, go ahead, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you again, and thank you, Mayor. Really, when we first put forward this legislation, and even before that, Councillor Pena, who I know is on her way, got councillors together to really address this, especially after the passing of Erica Chavez. When we see deaths like Erica Chavez that could have been avoided had someone just followed our speed limit, it's really impacting all of us. And so all of the councillors got together because speeding has impacted each and every one of us in every single district throughout the city. And we had this conversation and put forward this legislation, and through community input sessions, we made amendments to really hear out our community's concerns. So we put in a flat fee for the contractor that would take on the mobile speed enforcement. We put in community ways to actually, if they couldn't afford their tickets or their citations, to do community service. So that was through and as a result of community input, and we will continue to hear community's input for the rules making process. But for us, overall, what we have heard throughout the city is that we have to do something, that this is just another tool in our toolbox to mitigate speeding, that we will continue to enforce our traffic and support our officers when it comes to excessive speeding, like the speeds that killed Erica Chavez, going over 125 miles per hour. So again, this is a tool, and this is one step forward to really making our streets safer. So thank you.
And also with us today, you know, City Hall, believe it or not, is nonpartisan. But I just want to mention that this was, again, an 8-to-1 vote. and it showed folks from all parties, all parts of the city agreeing, and that's a great thing. And I want to also bring up our next counselor, who is a part of just standing up for pragmatic law enforcement, Counselor Bassan.
Good morning. I'm so excited that we are moving forward with mobile speed enforcement here, and that council passed this, and that the mayor's office and we have all collaborated together so that we can work together to make Albuquerque safer. Some of the top concerns that my office hears about, and I'm willing to bet all these offices of council and the administration, is that crime is out of control in Albuquerque. Excessive speeding is out of control in Albuquerque, and we need to do whatever we can to reduce those. So until we get more officers, which everyone is working very hard to do, the Albuquerque Police Department is doing what they can to keep us safe every day and every night in our city. But we have to be able to come up with creative ways to make sure that we can enforce crimes that are not so violent. And I think this is going to be one very active and motivational way that we can get the message out to our city that excessive speeding is not going to be tolerated, and that we need to drive more responsibly so that good families and residents in our city are not the ones that are suffering the consequences by someone's poor and reckless decisions. I'm very grateful to be here for this signing, and I can't wait to be able to get these mobile speed enforcement devices on our streets in Albuquerque. Thank you.
And now to walk through some of the details around what the preliminary data has looked like, which certainly validates what we're doing, is our acting commander of our traffic and motors units, Lieutenant Wheeler.
Thank you, everyone. So as the mayor and councilors have mentioned, speeding is a problem throughout the city of Albuquerque. With their support and their diligent work on bringing the speed enforcement back to mobile speed enforcement cameras, and as the mayor said, APD is 100% supportive of this because it's going to be a force multiplier for us. So currently in the traffic division, including my motor officers and the DWI officers, we have 37 people issuing citations for speeding, modified exhaust, also responding to crashes and other various calls for service. So these will help us be where officers are not at that location. When this talks about the mobile speed enforcement first began, a company called Novoa Global reached out to the city, expressed that they have the technology that we're talking about, and they allowed us to use their equipment to gain preliminary data and to show that these cameras actually do work and they collect a lot of information. So on the 1st of October, we placed 2 cameras in the city. There's one right now that's about the 9700 block of Montgomery, and it's for westbound traffic. And on Gibson, we have an eastbound and westbound traffic camera about the 4700 block. I'm going to give you some of the information that's been collected from the 1st of October through the 10th of October. So in both areas, a total of 331,974 vehicles passed in front of those cameras. For eastbound Gibson, 115,255 vehicles have passed both directions. The fastest speed was a westbound vehicle at 111 miles an hour. The posted speed limit on Gibson is 40 miles an hour. 60,270 vehicles were doing between 50 and 64 miles an hour. That's 53% of the vehicles passing that direction are speeding. 4.4% of those vehicles are doing over 64 miles an hour in that posted 40 mile an hour zone. These speeds kill, and I hope drivers understand that. The westbound cameras from those dates were 131,727 vehicles captured on camera. 44,000 of them were doing between 50 and 64 miles an hour, and 1,800 were doing 64 plus miles an hour. The fastest on westbound Gibson was 94 miles an hour in a 40 mile an hour zone. For our Montgomery corridor, 84,992 vehicles were captured on camera. 12,000 of those were doing 50 to 64 over the speed limit, and our fastest was 106 miles an hour on Montgomery. As you guys are aware, both of those corridors are heavily traveled with pedestrians and vehicular traffic. People need to understand that if they're going to be late, speed does not help them get there much faster. So people need to prepare to leave earlier and just slow down. Just think about your family and how you would feel if someone speeding to get somewhere 2 seconds earlier kills them because they're going so fast. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me.
Thank you so much for that, Lieutenant, and we'll be sharing all those numbers, of course. We'll put them in writing when we send out the details on this. But you know, if you didn't hear that, basically 1 out of every 3 cars is going over 10 miles the speed limit. And this has never been about 2 miles over the speed limit or 5 miles over. And you saw as much as 5, almost 10% in some situations, going 15 miles over. So I think what Lieutenant ended with is a tremendous transition to Maury Sanchez. He said to think about our families. And it's important to remember that speeding does have a name. And now way too many of our families know that that name is somebody in their family. And so with the story of Erica Chavez, Maury Sanchez, come on.
We are truly grateful to the elected city officials and the city of Albuquerque for their great support that they have provided for our family and hope to keep your family safe. Speeding has been an issue throughout our neighborhoods and different parts of the city. We hope that these speeding cameras will help keep our city safe and keep those breaking the speed limits accountable. We, the family of Erica Chavez, are grateful the speed cameras have passed. If it saves one life, it's doing its job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much again for continuing to share that story. And with that, we have to keep sharing it. But at least, hopefully this will help do exactly what she said, which is save at least one other life. So I know that I think Councilor Pena, I just want to mention, is very supportive of this. She couldn't make it today, or maybe is running a little bit late. So just want to acknowledge her help with this from day one and in her community. And I know she's very encouraged that at least some justice is coming. Okay, with that, let's sign this. And if folks are interested in taking one of these, you're welcome to. And if you guys maybe want to scoot up, if you don't mind, we'll just kind of do it more together. And what's today's date, anyway? Thank you.
15.
It's a quick one. All right. So, give me that pen. Of course. Yeah, I'll do a few of them. Okay, thank you everyone. So now we'll get to work on getting these out. Our expectation is sometime late winter. We hope to have this up and running. Thank you. You want another one? All right. You got it. Yeah, absolutely.